It is already the worst loss of life from a wildfire in modern U.S. history. Officials say only 2 of those victims have been identified so far. An estimated 1,000 people remain missing. The flames have destroyed most of the historic town of Lahaina.
The deadly fires in Maui have already claimed the lives of 96 individuals as we share this story with you at this moment. However, that death toll is expected to rise, especially considering the fact that there are more than 1,000 people still missing. Now, the area in Maui, Lahaina to be specific, has been completely charred. About 2,170 acres in the Lahaina fire have been charred, and the fire at this moment is about 85% contained. Roughly 2,200 structures have been destroyed, the vast majority of which are actually residential structures, meaning homes. And the physical damage as it stands right now is estimated to be about $6 billion. Now, the Maui police chief, John Pelletier, explains what the search for victims has been like. It has been absolutely devastating. And here he is describing it in his own words.
So of the 89, so realize this, when we find these, our family and our friends, the remains we're finding is through a fire that melted metal. We have to do rapid DNA to identify them. Every one of these 89 are John and Jane Does. And so when you are asking us, and we know we've got to get, and I love the way our House representative, how she said it, she was so eloquent. We know we've got to go quick, but we got to do it right. So when we pick up the remains and they fall apart, and so when you have 200 people running through the scene yesterday, and some of you, that's what you're stepping on. I don't know how much more you want me to describe it. That's what you're stepping on.
Cadaver dogs have been flown in from the state of California in order to help search for victims who have perished as a result of these fires. But this is, in fact, the deadliest fire in US history in over 100 years. So it's just been absolute devastation in Maui. My heart goes out to them. Just want to share an image of what some of the scenes look like, just completely charred, cars completely burnt. You can see the structures in the background completely destroyed. And there are thousands of people who have been displaced and they're looking for shelter as we speak. Jane.
Yeah, so I want to reiterate a couple of things from the last time we covered this, and then we'll get into how others are covering it. So first of all, why did it happen? So grasslands grew in former sugarcane farms, but then here comes the effects of climate change. So since 1990, precipitation in that area has dropped by 31% due to macro climate events, which is climate change. And then Hurricane Dora came in with very powerful winds, even though it was very far off the coast. And so we'll get into culpability about what people should have done with that. But the winds are so extreme that they fanned the flames, and the flames went horizontal to the ground and were very hard to put out. And so climate change doesn't create a fire necessarily, but what it does is it makes things extreme. The extreme wind, extreme dryness, even in a place like Hawaii, these are the things that take what would have been a small fire and make it into a disastrous, horrific fire. And the other thing is that, look, as he talks about those charred bodies and how they can't pick them up because they'll fall apart, I keep remembering that woman in the video that we showed you last week, where they drove past her and she was on the side of the road, but they were in an inferno, and they all had to keep driving, and that woman still haunts me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
I totally agree. Now, there are other issues. As I mentioned, thousands of people have been displaced, and many of them are looking for shelter as we speak. Emergency managers in Maui, as the Star Advertiser reports, were searching for places to house people displaced from their homes. As many as 4,500 people are in need of shelter. Flyovers by the Civil Air Patrol found 1,692 structures destroyed, almost all of them residential. Earlier, I shared that the number of structures destroyed is estimated to be much higher at 2,170, but still the majority of those structures are in fact residential homes. And there are also some issues with getting supplies to people in need because of the fact that the post office and some of the businesses tasked with delivering packages to people have been burnt down as well. So that's also a disaster. The other thing that authorities are trying to message and get across to people in the area is that they need to be very careful about the water. So apparently Maui water officials warned Lahaina and Kula residents not to drink running water, which may be contaminated even after boiling, and to only take short, lukewarm showers in well-ventilated rooms to avoid possible chemical vapor exposure. So if anyone in the area happens to be watching this and you didn't get that message, just please make sure that you keep this in mind and just be really, really careful with the running water there. Now, hundreds have also, as we've shared with you in our previous coverage, gone so far as to flee into the ocean in order to avoid the wildfires, only to be saved later by the Coast Guard. And I do want to also just share another element or angle to this story that hasn't really gotten much coverage, and it has to do with a now class action lawsuit against the utility company in the area. So 3 law firms filed a class action suit on Saturday against Hawaiian Electric, alleging that the destruction could have been avoided had the utility company de-energized its power lines ahead of the high wind weather. They argue that everyone knew that the hurricane was going to be a problem, and that the utility company should have taken these efforts in order to prevent the fire from getting out of control as it was. Hawaiian Electric said power had been restored to 60% of customers who had been without power since Thursday of last week, and crews are continuing to work to get about 5,000 other customers back online. But nonetheless, I think that these lawsuits point to an interesting accusation, especially as a Californian who has seen the utility company PG&E behave poorly, to say the least, in this state, and exacerbate, not just exacerbate, but literally start some of the wildfires that devastated California. And certainly the Camp Fire is a perfect example of that. PG&E had refused to upgrade and update its old, nearly 100-year-old equipment, and that faulty equipment sparked some of the deadliest fires in this state. So I am curious to see how this lawsuit against Hawaiian Electric is going to play out.
Yeah, so this is actually the deadliest natural disaster since the Camp Fire, and it is larger than that fire. So one of the biggest natural disaster death tolls in modern American history. So unfortunately, we tell you guys there's these once-in-a-lifetime events, and that's what the governor of Hawaii called this on the first day. But they are not once-in-a-lifetime events. They are now yearly events. They just keep moving around like the mass shootings. So you got one in Houston, then you get one in the Northeast, now you got one in Hawaii, and there are extreme tornadoes, extreme hurricanes, extreme fires.
I mean, just last week, we were talking about the rapid pace in which the Mendenhall Glacier in Juneau, Alaska is melting, and how that led to devastating floods in the area.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't matter where you live. Look, natural disasters have been around forever. They're being exacerbated by the impact of climate change.
Yeah, and they're literally calling them 1,000-year storms, 500-year storms, et cetera, because they're saying that was previously the probabilities of a storm like this happening. It would happen once every 1,000 years in recorded history. Now they're happening pretty much every single year. So look, when we talk about lawsuits, I think this lawsuit against the electric company is an interesting one. It's hard to judge, obviously, without being on the jury, and this is all just happening now, but it's a potentially fruitful one if that's what caused the fire. And here in California, as Anna pointed out, PG&E refused to bury their lines because it cost them more money. And so we had fire after fire after fire, tons of people died, and then there were lawsuits after that. And of course, they were feeding all the politicians, including Gavin Newsom, a ton of money So the politicians never made them do any of these. Texas is another case where Governor Greg Abbott, totally bought by the electrical companies, the energy companies, et cetera, and lets his citizens freeze to death, burn to death, et cetera, while he just keeps collecting check after check. Lawsuits are a rare place where we have any kind of hope left. And as you'll see later in today's show, some brave kids sued on the basis of climate change in Montana. I could argue that the good people of Hawaii should sue on that too. It killed your relatives, and you get all the downsides. And the oil companies and the coal companies have made, unfortunately, a literal killing, and they're taking home all the profits.
And look, one of the most important aspects of journalism is ensuring that the general public is aware of how things work, aware of the impact of climate change, why it is that these utility companies get away with murder. In the case of California and PG&E, there were lawsuits against PG&E. PG&E declared bankruptcy, and Gavin Newsom decided to bail PG&E out. So it wasn't just the fact that you have government officials in the state of California providing cover for the utility companies that refuse to do what's necessary to upgrade their equipment. After the fires happen, after the lives are lost, after the homes are destroyed, you have government officials coming in and providing cover for them and bailing them out after they've been sued. So I want to just quickly talk about the media's treatment of this story, their coverage of this story. As many of you have probably seen, the press has covered this story extensively, as they should, but the climate change angle is missing from the vast majority of reports. So Media Matters actually did an analysis of the press's coverage of the fires in Maui, and here's what they found: that only 4% of national TV news segments about the catastrophic wildfires even mention climate change. National TV broadcasters ABC, CBS, and NBC, and major cable news networks CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News covered the Hawaii wildfires for 11 hours and 45 minutes across 209 segments. Only 4% of the 209 segments and weathercasts about the Hawaii wildfires across national TV news mentioned the role of climate change in the wildfires. Again, I want to reiterate, it's not that climate change necessarily sparked the fire, okay? That needs to be investigated and they need to figure that out. It's that climate change creates the conditions in which the fires are exacerbated and uncontrollable, right? Major cable news networks aired 10 hours and 26 minutes of coverage across 174 segments or weathercasts about the Hawaii wildfires. Only 8 segments mentioned the connection between the wildfires and climate change. MSNBC mentioned it 5 times and CNN mentioned it 3 times.
Obviously, Fox News mentioned it 0 times. So ABC, CBS, and NBC have primetime evening news. I say that because a lot of people have forgotten. But if you think it's irrelevant, it isn't. It's viewed by more people than cable news is. It just happens that almost all those folks are 70 and above. But they're also the most high propensity voters in the country. And those folks have, how much, of course, how many seconds were talked about in regards to climate change with this story? 0 on those networks, 0, never mentioned. And so if you think like, well, I mean, they get it, right? I mean, we all know climate change is affecting these storms and making them more severe. No, they don't. Those folks that are still watching the evening news are the most hardcore TV viewers. They are not online. And they are also the most hardcore voters. And unfortunately, not because of them, it's not their fault. Because of television and television executives, they are literally the most ignorant people in the country. And I don't mean that as like they're unintelligent. No, they're perfectly intelligent. They're just like us, right? I mean it like they don't have any information.
You're not informed on it.
Yeah, you're not
informed. You're literally not getting the information you need.
Yeah, exactly. And so when they go to vote, they don't vote on climate change because they don't even realize it's a problem.
Right.
Because they're watching super old, super biased news. And of course, those are the same news outlets that say, we're the only ones who are non-biased. Oh, get the F out of here, man. So why do they do this? Why do they not mention climate change when it is perfectly relevant in this story and so many other stories involving all of these extreme weather events, as is constantly happening, and we're breaking temperature record after temperature record, both in air and in the ocean water. Because although those are factually correct, they are politically incorrect. Because then Republicans will yell at them and go, you're being biased against us. We're funded by fossil fuel companies and we love the fact that climate change is happening because it makes us rich. So you better not report it. And then they go, oh, okay, no way. No, it's gonna be biased, it's gonna be biased. We're not reporting it. No, what climate change? I don't see it. No, it just kind of randomly happened. Another 1,000-year storm, another 1,000-year storm, another 1,000-year storm. They're all random. Because it would be politically incorrect to tell you the truth.
They're also fueled by their obsession with ratings. And look, it is a difficult balancing act, and I think we do a good job with it. But they don't want to engage in the balancing act, right? They look at climate change related stories and they think our ratings are gonna tank. We're not gonna cover it. Let's just keep it real, Cenk. Like those stories don't perform well.
No, but in the midst of a story about this devastating fire,
it's a perfect opportunity to talk about the impact of climate change.
I mean, look, I get it. If you can tell a greedy media executive, hey, do stories that aren't gonna do well, they're never gonna do it. We're the only people that know, hey, those clips don't do well, those clips do well, but we're gonna do the ones that don't do well because it's important to get you information that you need, right? So I'm not asking for that. That's way too much to ask for with the insatiable greed of almost everyone else in media. No, what I'm asking for is when you have this dramatic story you're covering anyway, can you give people the full story? And those executives are saying, hell no, under no circumstances are we gonna give them the full story, because then Republicans would yell at us and oil companies would yell at us, and maybe we don't get as many advertisers.
Maybe some of their sponsors would pull out. Like, let's also keep that in mind. A lot of them, I mean, how many times have we seen BP ads in the context of a cable news network, right?
Yeah, and what are you gonna do? You're gonna buy more BP from a gas station near you? Well, maybe you have one, maybe you don't. They're mainly doing it not so you buy from BP gas stations, but so that they can purchase ABC, NBC, and CBS and make sure that they don't report the truth. So the people that tell you they're the most objective, mainstream media, are actually the most biased of all, and they'll do anything for money. And if you remember, during the Trump years, when he was leading up to the Trump years, 2015, 2016, they all admitted it. Jeff Zucker ran CNN, Les Moonves ran CBS, and they said, yeah, Trump's terrible for the country, but he's great for ratings, so give us more Trump. And they did wall-to-wall coverage because they said, who cares? All I care about is money. Money, but I'm objective. My ass, you're objective. They're the most biased people in America. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.